That is so good.
Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to be showing you what the cell membrane looks like and how it works while we eat some delicious treats.
You know it. I can't wait to dig into our food today, Alexa. Let's work our way from the outside in with the cell membrane.
So first we're going to dig into some cherry tomatoes and spaghetti.
My favorite. These tomatoes kind of look like phospholipid heads.
You mean like on a cell membrane?
Exactly. Did you know that a phospholipid molecule usually consists of two hydrophobic fatty acid tails and a hydrophilic head?
Yeah. No kidding!
This phospholipid bilayer is a result of its amphiphilic characteristic, meaning that it has both hydrophilic and hydrophobic parts. The phospholipid head is made up of polar molecules, so meaning that water does not repel the heads like it does with the nonpolar tails. The polarity of the phospholipid bilayer is no accident, as having these tails be nonpolar keeps unwanted water out of the cell membrane, and while the polar heads allows for selectively permeable borders.
So hydrophilic means that the molecule is capable of interacting with water.
Yep, exactly. And the opposite goes for hydrophobic, which means the molecule repels water.
Okay, cool.
This spaghetti sure does look like the hydrophobic tails on the cell membrane.
It sure does.
Oh.
Hey, did you know that cell membranes have lots of integral proteins, which are basically any protein that has a special function within the cellular membrane? One type of integral protein is the transmembrane protein. This bad boy spans the entire cell membrane. A lot of these transmembrane proteins allow for the transport of specific substances across the membrane.
Swag! I heard that integral proteins can function on both sides of the bilayer or transport molecules across it. Cell surface receptors are transmembrane proteins that bind signal molecules in the extracellular space and generate different intercellular signals on the opposite side of the plasma membrane.
And there's actually another kind of protein too, called the peripheral proteins. These proteins can attach themselves to integral proteins and penetrate the peripheral regions of the membrane.
Huh. So we represent this part of the cell membrane using nuts, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to draw in where our nuts would go. How it would be. And here we have our nuts. Now let's dive right in, Alexa.
Yummy.
So good. Eat those all day. Let's move on to some applesauce.
Good idea.
Convenient that you have that. It looks just like the cholesterol in the cell membrane.
It sure does. Cholesterol is actually a waxy type of liquid, meaning that it is a substance that is insoluble in water, like oil or fat. Specifically, cholesterol is a type of fat that is made up of 4 interlocked rings of carbon called a steroid. In the cell membrane, cholesterol helps immobilize the outer surface of the membrane and make it less soluble to very small water-soluble molecules that could otherwise pass through more easily. Without cholesterol, cell membranes would be too fluid, not firm enough, and too permeable for some molecules.
So now that we've talked about what makes up the cell membrane, let's talk about more what it does. Let's dive right into this applesauce, aka the cholesterol. I'm going to put right here in between the phospholipid heads.
And now we're going to dig in.
Yeah, yummy. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to eat this. Now we need to switch the spoon.
Good.
This is actually really good. Oh. Yeah, so now let's talk about more about the functions in the cell membrane.
The main purpose of the cell membrane, specifically the phospholipid bilayer, is to form a sort of barrier so that different molecules cannot easily pass through it.
However, the proteins in the membrane will carry out a lot of other functions too.
Yeah, One type of protein is the junctional protein, which prevents fluid leakage to allow free passage of the small molecules and the ions between adjacent cells.
Junctional proteins are so lit. Another cool protein is an enzyme. Enzymes are catalysts, which means they speed up the chemical reactions by lowering the activation energy, which is the energy a reaction takes to occur.
What are enzymes used for in the cell membrane?
Enzymes are mainly used for helping transporting cells around the membrane.
Speaking of transport, there are two major ways that materials can move about the cell membrane. There's active transport, which means that energy in the form of ATP is needed to move the molecules around, and then there's passive transport, which means that no energy is needed to move the molecules around.
The transport of molecules are very important for a cell. A cell actually has the ability to communicate with other cells through cellular recognition when their surface molecules or membrane glycoproteins interact.
While some cells have the ability to move more freely, others must have constant support from a stable surface in order to continue growing, functioning, and dividing. This is referred to as anchorage, since the cell must remain anchored in order to fully function.
Something else that is interesting about cells is transduction. This is when some sort of DNA that is foreign to a certain cell is introduced by a virus or a viral vector.
Well, that concludes our vegan mukbang cell membrane informational tutorial collab. We hope you learned a lot and enjoyed. See you next time.
Bye.